Realty. It's the realty. Everybody tune in. Come and hear the real speak. Realty. It's the realty. Real news and interviews for everybody. Realty. It's time that people wake up, wake up, wake up. We putting tea in they cup, they cup, they cup. Realty. It's time that people wake up, wake up, wake up. We putting real tea in they cup, they cup, they cup. Realty. It's the realty. Everybody tune in. Come and hear the real speak. Realty. It's the realty, real news and interviews for everybody. Realty, it's time that people wake up, wake up, wake up. We putting tea in they cup, they cup, they cup. Realty, it's time that people wake up, wake up, wake up. We putting real tea in they cup, they cup, they cup. The real tea.
It's tea time. Have a cup. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Real Tea, where we truly educate you, yes, and even you. I am your girl, Catrice, from the Tea with the Tea, and we're coming to you with that good game for your brain. And we're certainly happy to have you here with us. Today's episode on the Real Tea, we have a special guest that came to spill the tea. She shares a story of resilience and strength. Her journey is truly inspiring, sharing the tales of how she divided and conquered an opioid addiction. She's an American poet and a public speaker, just all around gal. Here we have. We want to please welcome to the Real Teeps platform, Miss Elisa Christensen. And we want to welcome you right now. Hello.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. This is
Absolutely.
yeah, cool.
We're happy to have you here. I am so intrigued and amazed that all of the things that I read about you, you're absolutely awesome. And we just gonna jump right into it. I got tea. I don't know if you have tea, but I got tea.
I got tea, girl.
Yeah. Well, come on, spill the tea. My first question for you tonight is, can you share a bit of your personal experience
Sure.
with us? But first, just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So I grew up down by Palm Springs in California to a pretty average middle class family. And when I was about 13 years old, I was skateboarding and I fell off the skateboard and I started a hairline fracture in my fifth vertebrae. So basically the bone, my tailbone, basically in that area. And I didn't realize it until I got much older. And in my my late 20s, right around my 30th birthday, I started doing triathlons. And I was just in a tremendous amount of pain and was just, I think when I was about 18, they started giving me tons of Vicodin. And I was just, by the time I was in my late 20s, I was just, eating them like candy. And it was just, you just need more and more and more and more. And I was traveling a lot for work all over the country and schlepping a bunch of heavy luggage with me and equipment. And I was just, standing there in business suits, giving presentations and just, just sweat running down my business suit from being in so much pain. And I kept going to all these orthopedic surgeons and they're like, listen, girl, you've got a broken vertebrae. We need to do like a 2-level fusion surgery on you. And I was like, nah, there's got to be another solution. I'm not doing it. And finally, after the third orthopedic surgeon gave me the same story and he said, look, you got to have this surgery, but you're 30, you're healthy, you're a triathlete. He says, that's not going to be your issue. Your issue is going to be getting off all these opiates that you're on. Because I was like up to like 12 to 15 Vicodin a day. It was all legal. It was all on, above the table. I wasn't like snorting them or buying them illegally. I was getting them by a prescription. But I was still like just as hooked as, the junkie behind the dumpster at the 7-Eleven. It doesn't matter. It's just that my drug dealers were wearing white coats and stethoscopes, So I finally went through the the 2-level fusion surgery, and I did really well because I was so young and healthy. And then about a year after the surgery, I was, well, I should put in that after this was back in the OxyContin days when they did the surgery. It was back in 1990, I guess. And they put me on OxyContin, and I detoxed myself off of that. And I'm pretty sure I did die. I was that was just brutal. Just that stuff was just absolute poison. And I got through that, and then I finally got was doing great, and I was on my way to the doctor, and I got rear-ended by a fully loaded logging truck, and it knocked the hardware loose in my back that the doctors had put in there, and I had to go through the whole doggone thing again. And they put me, they did the surgery again, and I had to go back through, it was just horrible. And so it was just, I just struggled forever on the opiates, and it just, I would get off of them, and then it would just slowly, I would just, my tolerance would increase and increase and increase. And towards the end, I was on them for 2/3 of my life. I was on them for 30 years. And towards the end, after I had my 2 kids, they actually put me on fentanyl patches. So for the last 11 years, before I went off them completely, I was actually on fentanyl, Percocet, and Soma, which is a muscle relaxant, but is just like a heavy sedative. I don't even know how I was even walking. But yeah, this is the medical industry. So yeah, that's how I got there. That's how I ended up, being heavily dosed and heavily dependent on opiates. So I really understand the opiate crisis and the opiate addiction we have going on in this country.
Wow, that is amazing how easily this can happen. So
Yes.
basically, you were legitimately sick, or legitimately in pain, and you were using the drugs to prescribe drugs by a doctor
Yep.
to help you along the way with the pain, or to help you to be able to cope with the pain. And then one thing led to another, it sounds like. So,
Well, here's the thing, though. I figured out some things along the way that I thought were particularly interesting.
mhm,
First of all, is I started to notice that, I would run out of my prescription, right? Like, what would happen with the fentanyl patches is I would, I love baths, and I love jacuzzis. I love water. And
mhm,
sure enough, I would like, get in a jacuzzi or get in a bath, and sure enough, one of the fentanyl patches would come off, and then
right,
I would run short that month, right? And when you're on those kind of opiates, there's no calling the doctor and say, "Hey doc, I lost a fentanyl patch in the bathtub this month. I'm gonna need to have my prescription early." No. They're like, no, there's no calling in a prescription for opiates early. No way. So
mhm,
I knew that. So I would just like grin and bear it, and I would start going into withdrawals, right? But I started noticing that the second I got into my car, the second CVS called me and said, "Miss Christensen, your prescription is ready for pickup." The second I heard that call, my pain would go away. Before I ever got to the pharmacy, before I ever got that patch and put it back on my body, before I ever got the medication in my system, just knowing I was on the way to that pharmacy to pick up that prescription, my pain was going away. And I was like, huh, that's weird. And then I read something about that scientists came out with, I forget when this was. It was probably like, I don't know, it was probably like early, I don't know, somewhere in the 2000s. I don't even remember. It's an old study, but they came out with a couple of, they were, we've been studying addiction and studying opiates forever, although this country has made absolutely no strides with mental health is in terms of addiction, even though we've learned a lot of things. And one of the things they learned that I thought was fascinating was that the human brain will actually create phantom pain to keep getting more opiates.
mhm,
And that was one of the things, this surgeon that I finally decided to go with to have do my back, which is one of the premier surgeons in San Diego at Scripps Memorial Hospital, one of the best surgeons in the nation. He said, Elisa, I'll fix your back, but you have to promise me that you'll get off the opiates. That's your real problem. You're fixing your back isn't the problem. I can structurally fix your back, but your real problem is that you've been on opiates so long that you've got about a 3% chance of ever getting off that drug and staying off of it. And I looked him in the eye and I said, Dr. Thorne, I promise you, if you fix my back, I will get off those opiates. Now, it took me quite a bit longer, a decade or so longer than what I thought I was promising, but I did eventually get off the opiates. And I wrote my first book was called The Fentanyl Warrior, how I got off and stayed off opiates. And I actually sent him a copy, and he actually wrote me back, which is pretty cool. But I was starting to learn about addiction and how the brain works. And I was actually studying it for a whole different reason, because while I was going through all of this and, basically living my life and trying to function with a brain that was just completely soaked in opiates, which is very difficult, let me tell you. I was also dating a guy who was just a train wreck, and his big addiction was gambling. And he just went through my life like a wrecking ball. And I was like, what is going on here? So I started studying what happens to the brain when we get addicted, whether it's a substance, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a behavior. And I started learning like the difference between like the hypothalamus, which is the ancient part of our brain that's really just it's like 100,000 years old, and it's basically just the gas pedal in the brain. It's the gas pedal, not much brake. It's the part of the brain that gets us to eat, drink water, and have sex, and keeps us like, procreating and perpetuating the species. And then the prefrontal cortex is like the part of the brain that just developed in the last 10,000 or so years. And it's the smart part of our brain. It's the thinking part of our brain. It's the braking system. So it's like, say you're sitting in a bar, right? And you're like flirting with this really hot guy, and he's flirting with you, and you're like, wow, this feels really good. And, and the hypothalamus is saying, yeah, girl, go, go, go. He's hot, hook up with him. And then your prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that's going, absolutely not. You don't even know this guy. You don't even know what's going to happen if you leave this bar with him. Girl, you do not do that. Okay. So thank God we have the prefrontal cortex, or we would just probably would have killed off our own species by now. But when you get addicted to something, it basically shuts down the prefrontal cortex, and it just puts the hypothalamus in high gear. And so basically it's like the lunatics have taken over the asylum. There's no braking system. So that's why, a lot of people are very judgmental of addicts or alcoholics, or people that have addiction to food or to gaming or to sex or to porn or to whatever. And they're like, why can't they just stop? It's not a character flaw. It doesn't mean that they're a weak person. Once your brain is addicted to something, it's literally a chemical imbalance that is compromising your ability to think rationally. So, and unfortunately, this country is just really lousy at treating addiction. And I'll give you an example of a country that's really good at it. In Denmark, which is a very small country, but they take someone with an addiction and they locate them on the other side of the country. So they get them away from all their homies, that they've used with, or that they're used to partying with, or whatever. They take them away from all of their triggers, all of the corner store where they usually score, their plugs, their friends, the first place they use, the first place they gambled, or whatever they're addicted to. They move them to the other side of the country. Then they get them sober and clean, and they keep them over there for about a year, and they retrain them. They give them two things that seem to be congruent to to ensuring success in people recovering from addiction. And it's also, on the flip side, it's very, very positive and very, very, very productive at keeping people from getting addicted.
Okay.
Human connection and having purpose. So if we have a lot of human connection, if we feel really connected and we feel like we have some sort of purpose in life,
Mm-hmm.
we have less of a chance of getting addicted, and we also have more of a chance of recovering and staying recovered from addiction. So they do that. They give people connections. They give people a purpose. And over there, they have about a 85 to 90% success rate. In the US, we stick them in rehab if they're lucky. If you're lucky, you have to have some money behind you somehow because it's very difficult otherwise. But you stick them in rehab for a month if they're lucky. Then we kick them out and we send them right back to where their plugs are, their party friends are, all their triggers are, and we offer them no mental health support. So they have and we have about less than an 8% success rate in this country. So there you have it. And I really, my first book, I didn't end up doing this, but I did kind of a deep dive into the psychobiology of addiction. But I think if I was going to write, I've written 2 books. The first one is The Fentanyl Warrior. The second one is The Teen Warrior and How to Raise Addiction Resistant Kids, which is a whole other topic, which is fascinating. And I did a lot of interviews for that. The third book I think we really need to address is what we need to do as a country to address our mental health issues. Because I read a study once. I've actually seen a couple of studies that said if we were to just take even 1/5 of the amount of money that we waste on jails and prisons,
Mm-hmm.
police that we have to spend on law enforcement, that we spend on lost work, lost productivity,
Mm-hmm.
hospitals, and all the other crap that goes with the problem of addiction, and we were to put it towards mental health and helping people make those positive connections and finding purpose in life and get ahead of it and prevent addiction, it would it would just save us billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Billions, so there you have it. So,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I I feel like there is failure in this area of addiction,
yeah.
because of instead of helping the person, people put stigmas on people who are addicted. Look at them. And when I look at a person that's addicted, I don't look down on them. What I'm thinking is that could be me, and so, that could be me. It could happen to anybody,
Yeah,
and it just, because I just listened to the way that it happened to you. It definitely could have happened. Some people get it by influence, from peers and things of that nature. Some just, kind of got, this is the cards that they were dealt.
right, oh,
The
yeah,
body doesn't have the 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 body doesn't have the ability to kind of know when this is happening. It kind of picks it up once it happens. I think the brain anyway picks it up
yeah,
once it happens. Oh, I gotta have this because you've been getting it, for so long. Can you
oh, yeah.
tell me what led you to write the book about it? Did this help in your healing process, or what led you to do it?
Yeah, it was so strange. I had a friend, and he was just the oddest friend. His name is Yanni. His real name is Keith Yon, and he was like the bass player for Milli Vanilli. Do you remember Milli Vanilli?
Of course, girl, it's true. And they sing that,
Right,
yeah. They
right, and he
they
was
was
just
lip
like,
syncing, yeah.
right, the lip syncing scandal, right? Now everybody lip syncs. Like poor Millie Vanilli, right? They got like kicked in the
Right.
teeth or something. Everybody does now.
Too
But anyway,
bad TikTok wasn't there then, huh?
right,
Now we
I
got
know,
TikTok.
right? but it was so funny because I met this guy like years ago, like back in like 2015, and I actually met him through business because I was starting to remember when we were all like into flipping houses. Oh, we're all gonna like flip houses, right? So I was gonna start flipping houses, and I actually met him through that. And he was like doing real estate. He's like this black guy from England, and he's just like the most interesting fellow. I don't know. Anyway, but he was in Las Vegas doing real estate. And I met him through that. I've only met him like in person twice.
Mhm.
And he was a recovering addict and he had been clean for like 25 years. And I met him and we never did a deal together, but we just like when we met and we started talking, and he had a girlfriend on his end. It wasn't anything, romantic or anything, but I don't know. He was like one of the, like maybe three people. I don't even know if there's that many in my life where he was like one of the deepest soul connections I've ever made in my life. Like he and I just connected on this level that was so deep and magical and pure.
Mhm.
And he was just so brutally honest with me. And he was the only one at that time that could be. Like anybody else that would have said what he said to me, I would have told him to, F off. But somehow this dude could get away with it. And he was there when I was like, I'm done, Yanni. I cannot live my life anymore like this. And he called me every day, and I would just be like, would you please just quit calling me? Because I was just in so much pain and so miserable because I detox, and I do not recommend this at all. But I actually detox cold turkey off fentanyl,
Mm.
like with no medical help, nobody around. It was bad. And
Okay.
but I got through it. Yanni was there calling me every day. And then once I got through it and I was able to, it took about 3 months. I lost like 30 pounds in like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. It was bad. It's not the way to do it, but I did survive it barely. And I
Mm.
got through it. And Yanni was like, you know what? He said, I don't even think you realize what you just did. He said, you need to write a book about it. He goes, you
Mm.
need to write a book about it because you need to inspire other people. And I was like, okay. So I started writing the book, and I'll never forget, I was in the grocery store one day, and somehow the checkout guy asked me about like what do I do? What do you do for a living or something? I said, I'm an author. And he said, oh, and he said, so what do you write? And I said, I said, well, right now I'm finishing up a book about how I detoxed off opiates. And there was this little old lady with like a little purple, bouffant, 50s hairdo standing behind me. And she reaches up and she grabs hold of my sleeve. And I look back at her and I'm like, yeah. And she has tears in her eyes and she goes, please, please help me. Please tell me how you did it. Please help me. And I was
Oh.
just like, oh my God. And then I came back up here to the mountain, and I there was a friend up here who also was an aspiring writer, and he said, "If you want me to read your book, I'd be happy to, and in fact, I'd like my wife to read it because she's struggling with opiates." And I said, "Okay." So I gave him a copy, and then I didn't hear from him for like a month, and then I finally saw him on the mountain again, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "I just wanted to let you know what happened." He said, "I gave your book to my wife. She stayed up all night and reading it, and then the next morning, I found her dead. She had
Oh
overdosed
my
on
goodness.
opiates." I was like, "Oh my god," and I was like, all these just it wasn't like they weren't subtle at all. They were like absolute kicks in my ass from the universe saying, "Get
Mhm.
this book written and get this book out now." And so
Yes.
I did, and it's so funny because I'd done a lot of writing before, a lot of blogs and essays and all sorts of writing, professional writing for other people and things. But it was my first book, and sometimes I cringe because my writing has developed and improved so much since then, but it's
Mhm.
still my most popular book. It's like 7 books ago, but it's still
Yeah.
book that I get calls to do podcasts on, and people are like, "Can I please get a copy of the Fentanyl Warrior?" And I always
Mm-hmm.
say, anyone that needs a copy of it, if they don't have the money for it, I'll just send it to them, because
Right.
if I can save just one
Yes.
life, it's worth
Absolutely.
everything I went through. Yeah, and what I found out, and this is the truth, when I got off all that crap,
Mm-hmm.
90% of my pain went away.
Yeah.
90% of my pain went away,
That's
because your
amazing.
brain will create phantom pain to keep getting those opiates. I've never been happier. I've never been more productive. I've never felt better. I've never been more active. So if there's one message I can send out to your listeners and your audience, is that there is a bright side on the other side of this, and
Mm-hmm.
you can escape the dark side and come to the bright side. And I promise you, it is beautiful on the bright side, and it is just,
Absolutely.
the wind is at your back, and you're swimming downstream, and the current is
Absolutely.
behind you, and it's 1,000% easier and better.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just listening to your story, I feel there, about, how you were inspired, how sometimes we got to pay attention to the signs.
Yeah,
Sometimes we hold ourselves back without knowing our full potential because of, distractions and things of that nature, and
yeah,
not knowing that what you have on the inside of you can
that's
help
right.
someone else. Even though the lady died, at the end of the day, through her death, it seems like you were able to save someone else in the
That's
midst of
right.
this, because someone else could have been near death too. I mean,
Yep,
and that just shows us as human people, if what we're putting our minds to,
yeah,
staying focused on, like you were focusing so hard on, let me get the pills, let me get the pills,
yeah,
and then you started focusing on, let me get the book, let me get the book, and here we
yeah,
are 7 books later. So
yeah.
I commend you for that, just a straight warrior to me,
Thank
for being able to do that. That's an inspiration to myself.
you.
There may be someone out there who has a book in them, or a
Yeah,
personal experience in them, that, because we sometimes we think we're alone in different race, in the race, whatever it may
oh
be.
yeah,
We think
absolutely.
we're alone, and we're the only person that's going through this, no matter what it is, whether it's a addiction, or whether it's trouble in your marriage, or trouble with your children. People
Yep,
think that they are the only people, but we're not alone.
no,
Life is a big old obstacle course. I say it all the time. It's a big obstacle course. You run over here, you got to go around here, you got to go underneath. If you can't get there, then you go on top. I mean, it's just one big obstacle course. And I think that was a phenomenal story, in regards to how, you wrote your book. So that was great. Can you tell me now, what message or lessons do you want your readers to take from your book?
um I would probably say, from the Fentanyl Warrior, I would probably tell them that, the most important thing I learned from the whole experience was that the human brain and the human body is always trying to establish homeostasis. And
Yes.
so when you put a drug or a behavior or alcohol or whatever you put in it, even like, when you're constantly on TikTok or whatever, and you're constantly getting that hit,
Mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
used to that, and your brain's like, okay, and it establishes a new homeostasis. Then when you take it away suddenly, that's when you go into withdrawals and you start feeling a little depressed or a little sad. Or if you're like, if you're smoking bowls of meth all day, you take that away, then you're really going to have a problem.
I know, for real.
But whatever it is, you're but the important thing to know is this, and I knew this, and this helped me a lot, and this is why I'm emphasizing this. If there's anyone out there listening to this, there's so much fear because you're like, oh my God, I don't want to go through the withdrawals and it's going to last forever. I'm going to feel like crap forever. You're not. And I'll tell you why. It's because of homeostasis. The human mind and body will get that pendulum swung back the other way, and you will eventually establish homeostasis, and you will start feeling normal again once you get whatever it is out of your system.
Absolutely.
And I knew that from the research I had done about my gambler boyfriend. I was like, I had understood the chemistry of the brain enough to know. So when I was crawling, and I mean on all fours, crawling, feeling like bugs were crawling under my skin, crawling into the toilet to throw up my guts, sweating profusely while freezing to death and thinking I was dying, I knew if I just hung in there long enough, my body would get out of this and it would recover, and I would be okay. I knew I would be okay. And that gave me just enough glimmer of hope to hold on. And I pulled out of it, and I was okay. So that's important for everyone to understand, that our human bodies are so incredible that if you just give them a chance, they will reestablish homeostasis. And guess what? They will kick in again and start providing you your own endorphins, your own dopamine, your own serotonin levels will come back up, and you will be able to find joy from, curling up in front of a cozy fire, or from a hug from a loved one, or from petting your dog, and stuff that, after doing drugs or alcohol or whatever your poison is for a while, all that stuff kind of fades away because your brain is used to getting these big bombs of the chemicals in it. You have to let that stuff clear out, and then your brain will start acting normal again, and you'll start getting natural highs again. So that's important for your readers, your listeners to understand. And then it's also just important to know that you need to help people. If you're trying to help someone that's going through an addiction, I think the best way, because actually we just had a miracle happen up here on the mountain. We just got a guy that was our token homeless person. We have a community of about 3,000 people up here, and we live, I mean, it snows all winter, it gets really cold up here, and we have a homeless guy up here who has been a severe alcoholic, and he is the sweetest guy on the planet, and we all love him, but his disease is just, we've just watched it progress, and we've all tried to help him. None of us could help him. We've all tried to get him to rehab. He wouldn't go. And we've just watched his health decline. And we knew that his ticket was up this year. It's like he wasn't going to survive another winter. We've all tried. And somehow, I don't know what changed, but this was the time I was with him. And I just said, it's like you can't pull on the reins of a horse and stand out in front of him and get him to go. You have to walk beside him to get him to walk. Somehow I was just like calmly trying to walk beside him, and he finally just looked at me and agreed, and he said, okay, I'll try it. I'll go to rehab. And he's in rehab right now, and it's just amazing. But it doesn't stop once you get them in rehab. You have to have the support for them when they get out, and you have to make sure that you have human connection set up for them. And you have to make sure, if you can, either if it's for yourself, it's hard to do for yourself, but if a loved one or a friend, and you're trying to help them get and stay sober, you need to make sure that they have human connection and that they have a purpose. And we need such little hope as humans. That's what's so amazing about our species, is you can have some guy that's been flipping burgers at McDonald's for 20 years. But if he has the dream of being an architect, and if he is only taking one class per year at the local community college to become an architect, that's all it takes. That's all it takes, girl. That's all it takes. But that's all it takes. If he has that one little glimmer of hope that he feels like he's moving forward towards, that's enough. You know what I mean? But if he doesn't have that, hell yeah, he's going to self-medicate and numb out. Because if we don't have hope, if we don't have purpose, if we don't feel like we don't even matter on this planet, well, hell yeah, we're going to numb out to that pain. That sucks. So, you know what? Help people. Let them know they matter. help them find their purpose in life, help them make healthy connections. And let's see, I mean, when you vote, when you go to vote, vote for senators and political leaders that are interested in funding mental health, because we really
Yes.
need that in this country. So
Yes, yes, that's another show, but that is definitely
yeah,
that's a whole nother branch. The mental, to mental health.
yeah,
I heard you were talking earlier. What I take from you are things like, the trigger couldn't really help the trauma.
right.
So you were going through that. So that was one thing. But you answered like four of my questions just now. You did. You answered four of my questions, and I'm so glad to hear that. Because I was going to ask you, what did you recommend someone who was suffering with opioid addiction, and you talked
Yeah,
about going to rehab,
yeah,
having the personal connection, the human connection with someone, and what is amazing to me is that natural things seem to work for us if we're receptive to them.
yes,
So that human connection, I mean, help with the healing and the growth
yeah.
of a person that has been addicted to opioids and things of that nature. Has the writing the book, I know it has helped. I know
Oh
it
yeah.
helped on your journey. So how did it help you? What happened when you
Well,
started writing the book?
it's interesting. The book has kind of become my version of the 12 steps, because
Okay.
and I will never ever take anything away from this 12 steps.
Okay.
What AA and NA does and what they offer is absolute brilliance, because
Mhm.
not only does it help people admit that they are powerless against their addiction, but it
Mhm.
also holds them accountable, has them make amends to the people they've hurt, and it holds them accountable by eventually putting them in a position where they feel responsible for a new addict or alcoholic coming into the program. They become
Okay.
they sponsor a newbie in the program. So
Okay.
now they're not just staying sober and clean for themselves, but they're staying sober and clean for another sufferer that they've taken under the wing. It's really brilliant, actually. Psychologically,
Yay.
it's absolutely one of
Mhm.
the most brilliant things anyone's ever put together. And the 12 steps, I feel like, regardless of addiction issues, which, I mean, honestly, about like 1 in 3 of us on the planet have addiction issues.
Mhm.
So, like, I mean, it's really rare. It's getting more and more rare nowadays for people not to have addiction issues. But even if you don't, I feel like everybody should just work the 12 steps. We'd just be all better humans. We would just
Mhm.
really but yeah, I mean, that's a free program. It's everywhere.
Mhm.
And I think everyone should do it regardless. And there's even programs that are extremely beneficial. Al-Anon for
Okay.
any family members, loved ones, or friends, or spouses, or boyfriends and girlfriends that are suffering with an addict or alcoholic in their lives, because that's extremely difficult. I think the most painful thing I've ever seen is watching both a father and mother, but especially a mother uh, 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 go through the experience of having a child who's an alcoholic or an addict, because she's hardwired to try to help that child, but
Mhm.
it gets to the point where she's trying to help her child, and she's actually causing harm by helping, because she's being codependent. She's making that
Mhm.
she's causing more harm than good by trying to help. It's just
Mhm.
a horrible, horrible situation for a parent to be in, or a family member to be in. So I just think that whole program is extremely educational and supportive. It's free. And I think everyone should participate in it or get into it. But yeah, I guess I kind of wrote the book in lieu of going through the 12 steps, but I think I've gone through them in my own way, and I highly recommend that program to anyone. I mean, all you have to do is Google it, or pick up your local phone book, or ask anybody, and they will direct you to an anonymous meeting where you will get support no matter what your addiction, I don't
Okay.
care. I don't care if you just drank a fifth of vodka in your living room and you can barely stumble down the street. You can stumble
Mhm.
into a meeting and they will welcome you with open arms and they will help you. And that, I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Man, you are something special because
Oh, thank
that
you.
was also my next question. This I was that's why I'm like I was just about to ask her about the family members and loved ones who may be struggling, with
Yeah.
someone who is, addicted or struggling with addiction. What type of things should they do? I've never done it. I've never had that or the opportunity, but because of the human connection part of it, the family is affected by the addiction as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that sounds like it's so profound that when people are going through things like this, the family don't think like this affects you too, so you have to pay attention to this as well. You have to support the person, and and kind of ride it out with them, as opposed to pointing the finger at them, or being aggressive with them. I think
Oh, it's
that
horrible. There's no blueprint. There's no
Mhm,
instruction manual really on how to walk through the experience or the process
mhm,
of dealing with a loved one who is addicted, and it is the most horrific, heart-wrenching, life-destroying experience,
yeah.
and that's why I would say there's no one on the planet that can understand or guide you better than someone that's been through it, and the
Mhm.
only people that know and have been through it, the only organized group that I know of in the country is Al-Anon, which is
Al-Anon.
a subdivision of AA and NA, and it's
Mhm.
basically the families and the loved ones of the alcoholics and the drug addicts. And they're like, "We need a group
Wow.
too." Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're amazing, and I went, after I broke up with the wrecking ball,
Mhm.
that went through my life, and I was already in recovery. I had been off, opiates for several years, but I still needed to do some healing on that end. I still needed to understand because there's so much damage that's done to the loved one,
Mhm.
on so many levels. And you have to rebuild your boundaries. You have to rebuild so much
Yeah.
after doing that, and it takes so long, and you can't do it on your own. You don't understand, you don't know, you
Mhm.
need guidance. So
Right,
thank
right,
God
right.
there's people out there that are willing to help, and they're veterans. You go to those meetings,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh yeah, I went through it with my son for 30 years, and just yeah, I'm here to help you." It's
Mhm.
a brilliant, brilliant thing. It really is.
Absolutely. You got it from both angles, like being with the boyfriend who now you're the
Woo!
family member who's
Yeah,
dealing with the addicted person, plus you battled your own addiction. So I just want to commend you. I thank you so much for coming and talking to us tonight.
sure.
We talked about your book. Can you tell us where we can find your books? Tell us.
Sure, sure. Probably the easiest way to find it is on my website.
Mm-hmm.
It's at author Elisa, ELISA.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was going to tell you as well. I mean, my mom was an alcoholic. She was a functioning alcoholic, but still an
Okay.
alcoholic. And my brother actually was a speed addict while I was
Oh
growing up.
wow.
So, and I
Wow.
come from a long line of Irish alcoholics on one side, and I look back and I'm like, you know, I look back and it's just like, if we're really honest, I mean, it's pretty uncommon for any of our families not to have, somebody in the bloodline that
Yeah.
was not an
Yeah.
alcoholic. Now and then I'll run
Yeah.
across somebody. And now
Yeah.
what they've found is that there's a new study, a new type of science called epigenetics, which is
Mm-hmm.
where our DNA can actually be changed by the way we're raised. So
Okay.
we can actually have our DNA somewhat altered if
Okay.
we are raised by, say, two alcoholic parents,
Mm-hmm.
or one alcoholic parent, or a drug addict, or whatever, if or the opposite, if we're, if we end up, say we come from a long line of alcoholics, but we get adopted by parents that don't have any addiction issues, they can alter our DNA in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way, where we have less addiction issues and less chance. So it's very interesting. They're doing a lot of research on it. So, and I do touch on that a little bit in the Teen Warrior, which is focused on how to raise addiction resistant kids. So all of
Okay.
my all of my books can be found at author Elisa, ELISA.com. And I so appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, you were absolutely awesome.
Oh,
You were
thank
awesome for
thank you.
helping. I mean, I'm all for encouraging and enlightening, and you definitely enlightened me on on the subject of addiction, and not only with the opiates but with the alcoholism, and being, on both sides of the fence or both sides of the spectrum is really great, to like, so people can know, if you're the family member, there's hope.
Yeah,
If you're the drug addict, there's still hope. There is
absolutely.
always hope, and no matter, it's what we put our mind to. When you spoke about homeostasis, all humans have it. That's the
Yes,
wonderful thing. All humans have that homeostasis. That's where you're able to adapt to what's going on. You're able to adapt to it. If it's very
yeah,
cold outside, your body can adapt to it being cold. I mean,
absolutely.
if it's warm, hot outside, your body can also adapt to that. So the same holds fast for the drugs.
Yeah,
If it's no drugs, your body can definitely get accustomed to not having any drugs in it.
that's right.
So
You
that
just have
is
to give it a chance. Yeah.
absolutely, that was a great, great message, Miss Elisa. I enjoyed you. You are a ball of tea information.
Good. I'm so
And
glad.
I thank you so very much. Right now is just my little final sip of tea. Elisa, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. We go through storms and dark places where it
Yes, we
seems
do.
like it may be no light at all. Our
Yeah,
guest tonight gave us some great tips to go on now.
yeah.
So we want to take this and we want to run with it. And thank you guys so much for sipping tea with me, your girl Contrice. Miss Elisa, you take care, okay?
All
And
right.
thank you for
Mwah.
joining us.
Thank you
Be
so
blessed.
much, honey. You have a good one. Thanks for
Yes,
having me.
ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Bye bye. Miss Elisa was absolutely awesome. You guys, I enjoyed you tonight, and I certainly hope that you enjoyed us. And we'll see you again right here on The Real Tea. Take care.